to apologize, though, because when Stephen told us to turn out our lights for meditation, I'm not sure mine's come back on. Let's see if I can go in here before long. Stephen did talk last week, and he was asking me if I was going to talk about Christmas because he had several Christmas songs, but for some bizarre reason, I've been into actually speaking about the topic for the month.
What is that about?
I don't know where that came from, but the topic is wisdom. And, you know, that can be intimidating. I'm going to stand up here and tell people about wisdom. And then I thought, well, you know, as ministers, regularly we get up here and talk about things we know nothing about. So why not with wisdom? You know, wisdom is, talking about spiritual wisdom, it's actually our relationship with the divine, is what it is. And as such, you know, it has many different aspects, but it's sort of like divine grace. And I was thinking about how we're century-long debates about divine grace. And is it something that you can earn or something that's given to you strictly by God? And, you know, the Catholic Church came up with a concept that it must be given. You can't earn divine grace, because if you can earn it, then that puts an obligation on God. Because then that means there's certain things you can do and you get divine grace automatically, whether God wants you to or not. There may be some people God would prefer not to. You never know. But of course, in New Thought, we know that what might be called divine grace or spiritual wisdom is actually something that comes naturally as you develop and as you increase your level of consciousness, if you will. And so with that in mind, looking at spiritual wisdom, if we can develop that, then again, what is it and how do we go about it? A philosopher, Seneca the Younger, said, "I knew many men who could have taken the trip to spiritual wisdom, or to wisdom, but they thought they were already there." So we all have to be careful about that. If we think we already have it, there may be a trip available to wisdom that we aren't taking. Now, as I think about that in spiritual wisdom and wisdom in general, you know, one of the things that's I found interesting is generally we think if someone's rich or popular, then they're smart, they're wiser, because they have a lot of money or because they've done something that makes them very popular. And it's interesting that the Tao Te Ching takes just the opposite approach. It says that the teachings of Tao are generally laughed at by people. And if they were not laughed at, it wouldn't be the Tao. You know, it's sort of saying that there's this spiritual wisdom, this extra knowledge or extra wisdom of things that isn't just generally out there. And you can seek it, though, and you can go to look to find it. So as we do that, let me start off saying that there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is important, of course, and it's the how-to, if you will. And wisdom, the how-come. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and it was an emphasis in behavioral learning theory. And one of my early jobs was as a behavior management consultant at a service for people with, or organization for people with disabilities. But as part of that, when I was there were some people giving seminars throughout the region, and they were on behavior management. And for some reason, the administrator decided I should go along with several of our staff to this, because she knew nothing about them, but they were very popular. Everybody was going to take their seminars. So we went to the first one, and I told her, don't bother sending us again, but she sent us to the second one anyway. But the problem was, they taught strictly knowledge. They taught strictly technique. And in behavior management, there's lots of things. There's fading, there's shaping, there's negative reinforcement. And what they would do is they would say, in this situation, do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's how you get this result. And that would be wonderful if all people were the same. And so what would happen is the staff would come back and start doing step 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe for this person it worked, but for that person it didn't. And then they were lost because they didn't know the wisdom. They didn't know why that kind of thing worked, so they couldn't adjust it. They couldn't make any changes to make things work that they were doing. And I think that that's something that, in effect, we deal with a lot. There's spiritual wisdom as well, of course, and spiritual knowledge. And spiritual knowledge is important for us. The 5 steps for spiritual mind treatment are knowledge. How many of you know the 5 steps? And those are knowledge. They're a technique. Nothing wrong with it. Great to teach people. Now, when I do spiritual mind treatments, I don't follow those steps. Because I've done that, and for me, it didn't work as well as I would like it to. And I felt like I knew the wisdom behind it, of how things work, and I was able to adjust it to fit what I'm doing in the situations that I'm in. And so again, there's nothing wrong with the knowledge itself. It's absolutely needed. We see it a lot. One of the things that often happens with us, again, I think in the situation in spirituality as a whole, is people come out with these popular books. And again, they're popular, so they must be wise. And so we all read them, and then often we create classes and teach them. And then a year later, nobody remembers what that was about. Because they were techniques, they were knowledge, which were fine, but limited. And then you have to go on to the next one and look for the next technique. And maybe instead, or not instead, but in addition, we can be looking at wisdom. Now, again, in a lot of our talks up here, we give knowledge, which is very good. We give knowledge. How do you heal? How do you heal yourself or others? Knowledge of techniques to find happiness, to find harmony and stuff. Now, those of you who have heard my talks, you realize that most of mine aren't like that. I think we have wonderful ministers who provide excellent knowledge in a lot of areas. Most of my talks I try to provide, if you will, spiritual wisdom. The why to. When we do these treatments, when we create these things, every once in a while let's step back and say, what is the wisdom behind it? To help carry us and to help make it a part of our lives. Because one thing about spiritual wisdom is it's not a thing. I cannot give you a bucket of spiritual wisdom. I can't give you a book of spiritual wisdom. Because spiritual wisdom is our interaction with the universe. It's our interaction with divine spirit, if you will. And that's going to be different for each of us. In many of his teachings, the Master Jesus said, "Blessed are," he would start the statement, "blessed are the meek," etc. Now, he wasn't speaking English. He was speaking Aramaic. Now, I don't know, he may have spoke English, maybe his accent was real strong, so he preferred speaking Aramaic. But he was speaking Aramaic, and the words "blessed are" that he used in Aramaic